wondering what brings us to a decision to get a hyperconverged platform. And essentially, we just saw the demand and we became reactive. Today, your host is not Anatoly Vilchinsky, so this is just a slide I forgot to edit. Don't pay any attention to that. Now, the main idea was any hyperconverged infrastructure and any appliance in a box is to get you up and running and get your virtual environment set up as quick as possible with minimum headache, minimum testing time, and that's what we're trying to do here. Instead of long days and months of mixing, trying, tasting, and all that, we give you a perfect blend which is bang for the buck, and it is also really robust production environment. We are being recorded right now, so if you have any issues with your comments being recorded, let me know via questions and answers box, and you'll be able to view this webinar later on our YouTube channel. As already mentioned, I'm StarWind Virtualization Product Manager. Been with StarWind for a while. Actually, it's 9 years. I had my anniversary recently. And also hosting StarWind webinar series. So not only the tap rooms where we do have more relaxed conversations, but also more serious stuff with all the white collar event. Quick agenda for today's tap room. I'm not really sure we actually need one, but StarWind's hyperconverged platform. StarWind HyperConverged Appliance without 5.9 and then StarWind HyperConverged Appliance with 5.9. What would be the main difference between those? Then a few technical things about the hyperconverged platform itself, and of course questions and answers session, the main part of us gathering here today. So, if you're looking for quick deployment of a virtualization environment, you're either looking at configurations you have previously used and which proved to be successful, or you're looking for an environment which has been designed from the ground up and pre-tested by someone before you. So there are options either to buy 2 servers, get a SAN and sell it to the customer, or to get a hyperconverged platform which is pre-configured and pre-tested and ship it to the customer. They can figure it out easily because as soon as you put the servers into the rack and connect them to the network and power, of course, turn them on, you're ready to spin up the virtual machines and start your applications working. Now, there are 2 options with StarWind HyperConverged platform. One is the Hyper-V based, and the second one is vSphere based. The only difference between these 2 would be the software used inside. So both of these platforms rely on StarWind Virtual SAN to do the storage fault tolerance, as well as multi-layer caching and all the storage tricks we do behind the scenes to make sure your storage is robust and reliable. Then we've got Veeam working for our backups and granular restores. So if you're looking at RTO and RPO numbers and you care about your data, this is the software to look at when setting up the platform. And then there is 5.9. In Hyper-V, 5.9 is the king and the centralized management unit for the entire platform. It manages the whole virtual machine cluster, it manages our backups, and it manages our storage as well. Everything can be viewed from there. With vSphere, we prefer to use just native vSphere management, which appears to be more preferred for vSphere administrators. So essentially 2 versions. All of them provide you a highly available platform for your production environment applications. And the difference between them is really minimal. No difference hardware-wise though. Now, you may be wondering, the whole hyper-converged appliance from StarWind, it may look like just Dell servers with some software on it, and essentially you may think it is something like on a picture above, but it's not true. Because yes, a lot of mixed hardware solutions have failed, a lot of mixed hardware software solutions have failed, and that's why we see more and more hyper-converged solutions and special black box solutions appearing on the market. But there are still issues with a lot of them being untested or unsupported. There are issues with compatibility, especially between different components. And if it comes from different companies, let's say you buy servers, you get a reference architecture, and then you buy the hypervisor, then you buy the certain other parts of the stack. And if something breaks, it's really hard to troubleshoot it, and it's really hard to find the throat to choke in this situation because everyone's just finger pointing at each other. I've been in that situation where I tried to figure out where the issue is coming from, but I was just making rounds between vendors who tried to say, nah, it's not us, it's Microsoft. No, it's not Microsoft, it's someone else. And then it's someone else, it's someone else, and someone else. And that's just so frustrating, especially when you're not the person who is running the business and you're just an administrator who wants the problem solved, and you have people breathing down your neck asking, when are our applications coming back? So in this case, we decided to go with pre-configured, pre-tested, and proven solution. And in our case, it's something which stands out of the crowd. So it's not like a reference architecture design, but something which you get as a fully configured solution. Yet you don't have to spend a fortune for it. It comes minimum of 2 servers for a highly available environment. It already has redundant networking between the servers. It already has storage configured. It already has everything set up. And moreover, StarWind is the single point of contact for any issues you may have with this appliance, as well as any questions and configuration assistances. So you don't need to go to multiple vendors. Let's say you see this pretty much familiar bezel for you, and you won't be dealing with this company. You will be dealing with StarWind, remoting into your systems and working out anything, be it a rate controller or be it hypervisor issue. Everything is worked out from our end. Now, as I stated, not a train wreck solution, but something we have really checked, we tested, and what we are responsible for. So we really stand behind our platform. Now, the whole management with Hyper-V platform is accomplished with 5.9 Manager. This is a really unique and neat tool for managing Hyper-V and clusters. You may see it being similar to the System Center Virtual Machine Manager, but the footprint, the requirements, and the capital expenditure associated with 5.9 Manager is significantly smaller. And there is also no licensing issues and no additional licensing required for that. And still, 5.9 accomplishes anything you may ever need for centralized management. First of all, it manages the entire cluster from a single window. It can get detailed down to individual host. It can monitor all the events. It can get you best practices on your system. It can load balance everything. It can also do a virtual machine aware antivirus, where your virtual machines are checked with a full check once in their life, and then it's only a change block tracking scan, which takes 100 times less time than a regular scan would do. Because let's say first scan takes an hour, every further scan will take you less than a minute. I've seen it in action, and that technology is absolutely hilarious. Now, storage-wise, we've got good old StarWind Virtual SAN. Well, not old. The company is old, but the product is all new. This is the core for all your storage operations. This is where our fault-tolerant storage comes from. This is where we get our automated storage features like failover and failback, handling all the outage situations. And this also gives us, well, actually it's non-volatile, but I would say it's distributed RAM and flash cache. Yes, it is non-volatile because if one node fails, second node has the same data in the RAM cache. So we consider it pretty reliable because we can have a full server fail and our cache is still intact, as well as our storage and our virtual machines. And of course, the backup component for keeping your virtual machine safe and protected against human factor and all the other issues where high availability doesn't help is Veeam Backup. I'm not sure I even need to tell a lot about Veeam Backup. Most of you should be familiar with it. If not, there's a really one of the leaders in the backup infrastructure. I actually think they are leader these days. I'm not sure. With all that marketing things, you don't know who is the actual leader. But the software worked really good for the hyper-converged appliance we do. We see it being really easy for our customers and really flexible in terms of how you can back up, how you can restore to sandbox and actually launch a virtual machine from backup if necessary. And I think there is even an option to replicate these virtual machines to Azure with this software. So yeah, definitely try it out if you haven't before. If you're using it, then you probably know that this is something you can rely on. Now, I mentioned every unit we make is built to order. So we don't only flash the operating system on these servers. We make sure that each unit is ready to be put into hardcore production the moment it arrives at your data center. So let's say you have a lot of robo offices where you don't have an IT environment yet. Let's say you're just building them. We can make sure that when the servers arrive, they adapt to the networking requirements of the site. They are up and running, and you can have your applications installed within the first hour of platform operation. And of course, as I mentioned, a single point of contact for anything you may ever need with the hyper-converged appliance. So you don't need to go to multiple vendors here. You've got a single point of support, you've got a single point of service. If you need more boxes, you also call us and we consult you what are your scalability options, how to scale further. Do you want more drives or more horsepower? All that is easily accomplished through our solution center. With that, I would like to transition to questions and answers session, and I'll gladly answer all your questions now. All right. Let's see. First question here. So the virtual SAN is instead of an actual SAN. We have a VNX 5300 at this time. Would a virtual SAN make any sense for us? So depending on what your hypervisor hosts are, virtual SAN may definitely make sense for you. Because VNX 5300 is a great SAN, but as far as I remember, it still relies on a single set of drives. Whereas with StarWind Virtual SAN, you rely on each individual server storage, and you're not tied to a single storage box. I would also add that StarWind may be faster than VNX with a similar set of disks installed because we utilize local RAM and flash to accelerate I/O, whereas VNX uses slow HBAs and cache is actually sitting behind those HBAs. So there is always an added latency even to cached I/O going from the SAN. Then a question from one more other attendee. What differentiates you from VMware vSAN? Technically, these are two different product types. So it will not be an apples to apples comparison, but still these products solve one problem. So yeah, VMware Virtual SAN requires at least 2 hosts. In this version, previously our main differentiating factor was VMware vSAN requiring 3 hosts. With StarWind, we actually treat drives and flash and RAM, whereas Virtual SAN mostly treats flash and spindles. They do not utilize RAM that extensively, especially if we compare StarWind's write caching to VMware vSAN caching. And also, StarWind would be much more flexible in terms of hardware you can use it on. So with VMware vSAN, you have a really, really narrow HCL, and there is always some limitations in terms of maximum number of drives supported, etc. With StarWind, we are good as long as StarWind has enough resources to operate, and we verify that this hardware is suitable for getting decent performance. Now, one more question. I'm having some difficulties deploying the VSA outside of vCenter. Is there a VMware version that does not require vCenter? Yeah, so technically there is a version which does not require vCenter, but the reality of it is you may need vCenter to enjoy the features you're getting with shared storage. We can definitely help you to set up StarWind's virtual SAN without vCenter, but you also need to consider the fact vCenter gives you HA options for your cluster. So yeah, just ping support and say that you heard in the webinar that it is possible to deploy StarWind Virtual SAN without vCenter, and our engineers should guide you in the right direction. Okay. Hyper-V running System Center VMM. I'm not sure I got the question because there is no question mark and I'm not sure what's the actual question topic. So if you could please precise, I would be really grateful. Okay, actually I just missed one question in the very beginning. Is there available support in other languages like Spanish? So for now, I'm not sure about Spanish. We definitely have hardware support available in Spanish, but if we talk about software support, I'm sure in German, part of English, then it would be French, and I think there is also a Russian-speaking engineer. I'm not sure about Spanish. This is something I'll have to double check. So you can always drop an email to support@starwind.com to double check that in terms of languages we provide for the hyper-converged appliance. Okay, so yeah, for here's a question for a system running Hyper-V with System Center Virtual Machine Manager and storing data on EMC VNX, how StarWind can help. StarWind can take the local storage of the Hyper-V servers, make it fault tolerant, speed it up using RAM and flash caching, and then provide this as additional storage pool to the Hyper-V cluster. At some point, I would even remove the VNX as a single point of failure here, because unless it is redundant, the whole configuration essentially looks like an inverted pyramid of doom, where multiple hypervisor hosts rely on one SAN. So what happens when a SAN fails? I guess we all know the answer. Okay. One more question. I just got back to this. Is the server of choice Dell, or could it be some other vendor like HP? For the hyper-converged appliance, the vendor of choice is Dell for now. But if you are ultimately an HP shop, I think you can get in touch with our sales and check how they can help you in that case. Because I know we had cases when we essentially turned other vendors' hardware into hyper-converged appliances easily. And this is what we've been doing for the last few years, was just installing StarWind Virtual SAN and then customer getting additional platform components separately. So we've been doing this for a while. So is it our software that makes it a hyper-converged appliance? I would say yes and no, because it's not our software alone. It's StarWind and Five9 making it something you can manage from a single place and something you can treat as a single storage and compute pool. And then Veeam gets here as a centralized backup unit. So essentially, the software is what makes hardware a hyper-converged appliance. Even if you take any custom things like Nutanix, SimpliVity, or any other vendor, or even the VNX, if you install the right software on it, and if you install the right hardware components like more CPU, more RAM, and stuff like that, and install the proper software, you can also turn it into a hyper-converged appliance. But we were just ones who made sure we get the best of breed components. We do a custom tweaked to the firmware to make sure that storage operates at top speed. And we tested all the components together, made sure they work together, they do not conflict, and that's why it's something we can really support and stand behind. Okay, so one more question from our attendees. Are these servers something something special or commodity? So these servers are commodity servers. They have tweaks applied to their firmware, and they have custom versions of the software running. So essentially, if you try to compare it with something on Dell's website, it won't be an apples to apples comparison. So it doesn't work the same way as do-it-yourself hyper-converged appliance. However, you can always change the firmware and revert the underlying servers back to their original state. So there is no magic hardware behind the hyper-converged appliance. It's all based on commodity hardware. One more question from our attendees. Is it actually possible to scale the platform up? Yes, it is. So that's a good question, by the way. With the StarWind HyperConverged Appliance, it is possible to add more drives and disk enclosures to the individual host, rather than buying a new server and only supporting scale-out model, like most of the vendors do. StarWind does allow to scale up, adding more capacity with more spindles or more SSDs, but keeping the actual compute in the same place. Yeah, and a side question here, can you explain the scale up versus scale out? Yeah, so scaling up is adding horsepower, be it disks, CPU, or RAM, to the servers you already have. Let's say you have two. And scale out would be adding a third server to the configuration, or adding a fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, etc. So it's basically vertical scaling versus horizontal scaling. And StarWind can support both of them. And next question is, what is the maximum number of appliances? Right now, Hyper-V limits us to 64 appliances inside a single cluster. And I see some people here just staying around and guess hesitating to ask any questions, like Mark, Masood, Melissa, Steve. Come on, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. That's the perfect time to ask them. Okay, next question here. What about the prices? Contact sales? Yeah, essentially for a specific configuration, the best idea is to contact sales. I would say that you'll be positively surprised with the prices you get, because really these prices compete not only with any other hyperconverged vendor on the market, but they also compete with a do-it-yourself setup. So don't be surprised if you get a hyper-converged appliance from StarWind cheaper than you could get the same server on Dell's website. One more question here. Does StarWind support virtual volumes? We are writing that functionality right now. I've seen the prototype, and if you are deeply interested in vvols, I think there is a way for us to give you a vvols VSA to play around with. And we're looking to release it later on. I guess it will be end of 2015. And we are also looking for doing a vvols functionality for Hyper-V as well. Okay, one more question here. Let's see. If we wanted to test StarWind, I understand we could test free version with 2-node to show our team how StarWind works. Where do we go about acquiring that information? For that information, you go to StarWind's website, and ideally the best way to test StarWind is a trial version. With a free version, you are limited in terms of the media you're sharing out and in terms of the configuration as well. So you cannot install StarWind on the hypervisor, you cannot do a hyper-converged configuration with a free version. So I would rather do a trial version, and if you need more time to trial it, typical trial time is 30 days. This is the default key. We can give you a 60-day key if you like. So this is also possible. Okay, more questions here. After being deployed, is it easy to add more disk to the VSA? Will expanding the disk in VMware make the storage shop usable in VSA? Yes, it will. So you first add more disks, make sure your data store looks bigger, then you go to the virtual machine, expand the virtual machine hard drive, and then tick that space in StarWind, and it will in turn present it back to the hypervisor host as more space for your applications and virtual machines. Okay, more questions. Is the operating system license included in the appliance? Are there enterprise Windows Server versions? By default, in the minimum configuration, we include the Microsoft Hyper-V Server 2012 R2. If necessary, we can ship these systems with the Windows Server Enterprise as well. So you can actually pick the Windows edition you want to be installed on the hyper-converged appliance. One more question. One of our centers is purchasing replacement Hyper-V host. They were going to get 2 of them and replicate virtual machines between them. Would this be a possible solution for them? Indeed, that would be a perfect fit for them because native Hyper-V replication works, but it is only an active-passive configuration, and there is always minimal recovery point objective here, which is different from 0. That would be 1 minute or even less, but you don't get the RPO of 0 with native Hyper-V replication. StarWind can get you there. Okay, yeah, a follow-up question in terms of RPO. So in backup world, there are, well, business continuity world, put it this way. There are 2 main terms. One is recovery time objective, essentially the time you need to spend to bring your configuration back to life. And then the recovery point objective, where that configuration will be in terms of time, last timestamp when you bring it back to life. So let's say you have an hourly backup. So if you fail, your recovery point objective is somewhere between 1 minute and 1 hour because your last backup is 1 hour away. And then your recovery time objective is equal to the time you need to spend to actually recover to that backup. Okay, YouTube channel address. Give me 1 second, please. I'm just going to... So, sorry, yeah, there was a question about what is our YouTube channel address. I think that this link will get you here. YouTube channel is StarWind Soft, and you can also get to our YouTube channel from our main website, which is starwind.com. and I think we'll upload the video by tomorrow morning. Okay, it looks like this was all for the questions today. Thank you so much for attending our today's event. I hope it was interesting for you and hope you enjoyed it, especially the Q&A session. I've got a lot of good questions here, and I appreciate active audience is the best reward for the speaker. And I wish everyone a happy Friday, which is just tomorrow. For some of us, it is something like 3 or 4 hours away. If we have anyone from Asia, those people already have Friday. So have a good time, take care, and stay tuned for upcoming StarWind events. Bye-bye.